welcome to the West and Central Africa English group. So myself, Anita Graham, and Grace are here as your youth moderators. Sophia is helping us with the slides and recording and supporting us through and through. So we will just to admit a few more people and then we'll just set the ball rolling because we have only 40 minutes and time runs very fast when you're in good company. So we would want to engage all of us as much as possible. So this session, we are only moderating, so we'll need a lot of our participants to share insights, their experiences, how their toolkits will be useful in their settings, and yes, their general experiences with regards to working with adolescents and young people on sexual reproductive health, especially in humanitarian settings. So um, I'll just admit a few people in, and my colleague Anita would start with the first um, session. So Anita, are you there?
Okay, hello everyone. Good afternoon. This is Anita Graham. Thank you, Oko, for the start. We would like for a few people to introduce themselves before we go ahead. You can either unmute yourself to introduce yourself. You can either unmute to introduce yourself or do so via the chat option. So do we have anyone who would like to briefly do the introductions?
Well, I think Anita can start. I think you can start first, and then another participant can continue.
Okay, so I think we can just use the chat box. Please introduce yourself. Let's know your name and where you're joining us from. Today we're talking about the 2020 Adolescent SRH Toolkit for humanitarian settings. And for this breakout room, we will be focusing on chapter 6 and chapter 8. Chapter 6 deals with the adolescent and sexual and reproductive health services and interventions, which really relies back on chapter 4, where services. This chapter, which talks about ASRH services and interventions. And for this section, for this chapter, we would like to focus on two sections: community-based services and outreach platforms, as well as multi-sectoral linkages and referral pathways. And when we talk about community-based services and outreach platforms, we are talking about how we can provide services and reach young people through existing community linkages, organizations, and platforms. And this chapter helps to provide guidance on delivering SRH services and information within the community, including the use of adolescent and youth first responders, youth-led organization, community health and communication media, and technology strategies. And we really want to know how Hello, please, can anyone hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
great. Yes. Anita, we can hear you. Keep going.
No problem.
Okay, sorry, I think I got disconnected for a bit. So we really want to ask, first of all, that what do you think are some of the issues adolescents and young people face in humanitarian settings regarding their sexual reproductive health? Hello, sorry, did anybody get the question?
Yeah, hello. Hello.
Hello,
Please,
yes, I can
can
hear
you
you.
hear me? Okay.
Yes, I can. You can go ahead. Do we have anyone who wants to respond, or should we go ahead?
Hello. Yeah. Hello.
Yes, please, you can
Sorry.
go
Okay.
ahead.
So, okay. My name is Esther. I'm from Ghana. So, with regards to your question of what you, if I that is if I got it right, I think even establishing the fact that humanitarian settings obviously are crises that are set to kind of displace people depending on what kind of humanitarian setting it is or where they find themselves, and that is inclusive of adolescents. Yeah, that's inclusive of adolescents, especially girls. And so when it happens like that, their normal day-to-day activities or their normal day-to-day routines are obviously um, are going to change.
Okay.
So, and
Yes.
then when it happens like that, depending on the crisis setting, interventions, be it from government or even at the community level, will be put in place. And so there will be restrictions on either schools, there will be restrictions on movement, there could be restrictions on what one can do or not. Now, using a typical setting such as the COVID period and some of the things that I noticed even from my own country here in Ghana, for COVID like this, one of the huge restrictions that countries had to put in place were lockdowns. And so in lockdown settings, it meant that people could not move, schools were closed, children could not go out to play and everything, they were home. One of the things that we realized during that period was increased abuse and violence against girls. Why? Because most of them
Okay.
were home. Now, rapists are always rapists. They'll always be rapists. These people were also home
Yes.
because there was lockdown. They weren't going anywhere. And then the children were also locked down at
Okay.
the community level in the homes with them. And so it was easy for any person to abuse a child, to lure a child, and then either defile them or abuse them in any form. So cases like that were going on at the community level, even for adolescents who come from abusive homes, like violent homes, where either parents or both parents are violent. Now they were locked home. Ideally, in previous settings, they may have left for school, but now they were home, they
Okay.
couldn't go to school, their parents were not going to work. And so, at the slightest provocation, there was an
Oh,
Sorry,
incident of
sorry. I think
abuse
what
where
are you
one
doing?
I
person.
might have to
Putting
cut you
pencil on
short.
what? Come here.
Okay,
Kneel
so
down.
thank you.
Kneel down. I said there. Kneel down there. Kneel down.
Hello? Oh, was she?
Sorry,
Was
I think
she?
I'm going to have to cut you short because of the time frame,
Fine.
Yeah,
so that someone
sure.
else can respond. So, does anyone have any other answer to some of the issues, humanitarian issues that young people, SRH issues that young people would face with regarding to their sexual and reproductive health? She mentioned the increased rate of sexual violence, especially young women, girls up. Do you want to respond?
Yeah. Hello. I think Audrey has raised her hand, and so she can join us and share her perspective. Hello, Audrey.
Hi, yes, I'm here. I
Um,
sorry, go ahead.
Shit.
Hello, Audrey, you can talk.
Hi. I just wanted to also add that, I'm not sure who spoke before me, but as they were saying, the increased amount of violence and everything for youth being home, them being home because of these lockdowns now, it's also makes it even harder to access any healthcare rather than before it was either scarce or it was far away. But now, because everyone has to stay home, you really can't see any medical professional to get any kind of help. So it's like increasing those odds of any kind of infections or diseases that could have been prevented or treated that are now just getting worse.
Okay, thank you so much. So these are some issues that young people, adolescents and young people do face in in times of humanitarian crisis. And that is why in instances like this, it is very important to leverage on community systems and provide community-based services. And one of them we mentioned was engaging adolescents and young people as first responders. It boils down also to meaningful participation, ensuring that young people, adolescents, are part of the solution, because when we don't involve adolescents in the solution, it can be very difficult to even get across to them. They need to be part of the solution that addresses their problem. And an example of engaging young people as adolescents and young people as first responders is the YPeer Nepal Emergency Response and Supervisory Support of Youth Networks at the onset of the 2015 Nepal earthquake response. And young people were involved in distributing menstrual materials to friends and community members. They, they were engaged in taking a rapid needs assessment. They provided the survey results helped to coordinate GBV and SRH services in Nepal as at that time. So these adolescents and youth were actively engaged in the process of helping other young people get through the crisis in Nepal in 2015. So we feel that it makes work much easier when young people are really actively involved. Then there's also the fact that with our kind of generation where we have a lot of mobile technology and we're more social media savvy, we need to establish platforms online, digital platforms that can help us get SRH services to young people, even in the midst of humanitarian crisis, because a lot of adolescents are online. A lot of adolescents use digital media platforms. So there are virtual safe spaces where adolescents can go and seek SRH information, seek referrals to SRH services within their communities. So based on this, we would also like to ask how you think your organization would be able to use these guidance and this tool from this chapter. For instance, we would hope that these guidance will be able to be used to engage young people in humanitarian activities. We mentioned adolescents and youth serving as first responders and youth responders, youth peer educators. So what do you think, what other ways do you think your organization would be able to use the guidance and toolkit from this particular chapter? Hello, please, can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can. I can, anyways.
Okay, so like no one is responding, so I want to be sure
Oh,
that.
okay, Anita, I think we have one person's hand up. So we found out who it is, and
O- Okay, Margaret, please go ahead.
Oh, okay. So my name is Margaret Bolaji from Nigeria. I work with Stand with a Girl initiative. So as we speak, we're working with women. Ideally, it was supposed to be women and girls at the internally displaced persons camp in Abuja. And it's basically on letting them have access to family planning information and services. Initially, especially as young people and youth oriented, we wanted to also include girls, both married and unmarried. But the community, I mean, in the camp, the officials, after engaging with them, were so strong on the fact that they are not interested in their girls, especially unmarried adolescents, to have access to family planning information and services. So for me, hearing you talk about how we can engage these young people, of course, with community support, to see the need for us to engage with them because they also have this kind of need. So the toolkit is coming at a time where we're thinking of how best, given the roadblocks that we already have, the challenges we have in engaging those young girls, hearing the different stories, whether firsthand or from other sources, about the sexual activities amongst married and unmarried adolescent girls on the camp. I feel that these toolkits will help us first even begin by engaging these young girls and boys, most likely themselves, to really know what the issues are. How can we support them? We might not be able to use internet basically because of the location. However, even with the older women, we're using the mobile network, so it doesn't need access to internet. So it's a toll-free number that they can call to have access to family planning services. So for me, looking through the toolkit, talking about the services and different intervention specifically for humanitarian setting would really support us in engaging the young people on this camp better than we used to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. And the good thing about this toolkit is that it also provides guidance for youth-led organizations. So if you're a youth-led organization or youth-focused organization who wants to provide SRH services to adolescents in humanitarian settings, you have a better idea and you have a better idea of how to go about it, how to engage young people, and how to, the toolkits, the guidance, and everything you would need to ensure that you are meaningfully engaging young people, adolescents in the solution is provided in the toolkit. So I'm going to hand over to Grace, who will take us through multi-sectoral linkages and referral pathways. Grace, over to you.
okay, it looks like Grace might be having some sort of challenges. So I would start from here, and then hopefully when she joins, she'll continue. So thank you very much, Anita. That
Okay,
was
please go
amazing.
ahead.
Okay, great. So we'll continue with multi-sectoral linkages and referral pathways. Now, building off of chapter 5 from the toolkit, with going beyond health services, this chapter shows how to identify SRH entry points and linkages with non-health humanitarian sectors. It also explains a critical component of multi-sectoral programming referrals. This section explains how to make successful referrals across sectors and provide universal tools to use when referring adolescent clients to different services within your organization as well as other agency services. So in working in humanitarian settings and the challenges that there is, you realize that as much as you may be providing information and health services. The way a continuum of services does not only revolve around health services. So you need, it's very essential to employ the services of non-health um, services, if I should say. So for instance, issues of like different interventions like toll-free numbers, peer educators, referral points, and all of that become very, very important. So you realize that using a multi-sectoral tool for work in non-health sectors to see where you can integrate SRH activities into places and services that benefit adolescents and youth. So for instance, there are some interventions that target young people in places that they gather to have entertainment activities and all of that. But in humanitarian settings, it's likely different because there may be some sort of urgency because they may be restricted to normal things like certain things that they are used to in their daily lives. So how do you then intend to integrate this non-health service referral points or intervention areas to target young people with SRH information and services? Now, the toolkit um, provides other advocacy toolkits as well as a case studies on how IAWG has provided small grants to youth-led organizations that agencies could use to show impact and readiness for their work. Now, there is also limited guidance on larger organizations and donors partnering with youth-led organizations and community-based organizations serving young people in humanitarian sessions. So how can you then advocate for more of this work? That is where the toolkit will provide, other advocacy toolkits and case studies from IAWG on the grant they provided to young people. So for instance, in humanitarian settings, it is because life is different and there may be a lot of challenges in addition to the normal challenges that we may have in a regular setting. So it is very important for us as young people and youth-led organizations, when we go through the toolkit, to look at these advocacy toolkits and case studies developed to guide how we can raise funds, we can partner organizations and develop strategies in making sure that we make it work. If I'll be very happy if any of our colleagues online can share a few experiences in such instances. If you have any experiences to share, you can also just raise your hand on the Zoom call, and then I'll make sure you speak to it. But in the meantime, we can also move directly to chapter 8, where I'll be speaking more on on the different sections of chapter 8, where I'll be speaking more on of SRH managers. So I will proceed with chapter 8, but in case you have any other experience or comment, you can text in the chat box or raise your hand, and then we will let you share your thoughts. So moving on to chapter 8. Okay, great. Now, chapter 8 looks at manager guidance, notes, and tools. So for our audience who may be managing a community project in an humanitarian setting, or even working with a team of young people to manage a project on SRHR in humanitarian setting, this is where you take a lot of cue and guidance from. And we'll share the link with you. I know some of my colleagues have shared it in the chat box during the main session on how to access the toolkit. But this is where we need your attention and where you get a lot of guidance from. So the chapter is new compared to the 2012 toolkit. It provides an operational guidance and tools for SRH managers to use when planning, implementing, monitoring, documenting their ASRH activities. Now, the chapter in itself has four main components: the different roles that SRH managers assume during an emergency, staff recruitment, support, and responsibilities, as well as resource mobilization and program implementation. So those of us who are fairly into managing SRH projects may be new to some of these things, but those of us who also intend to manage projects in humanitarian settings, you could see the additional specific roles or variants that how it differs from a regular SRHR activity or project in a regular setting compared to humanitarian setting. So now, the roles for the chapters, the roles and responsibilities of SRH managers. It looks at, it provides descriptions on the many roles SRH managers assume using a visual of different hats they wear when serving in humanitarian responses. So you'll be able to have like insight on the different responsibilities that come under your purview as a manager of an SRH project in an humanitarian setting. And then maybe with your team, you can decide where your strength lies and all of that, and it can help guide that process. Now, for staff recruitment and support, it describes the key responsibilities of an SRH manager when hiring and managing staff, including recruitment, onboarding, training, example, child safeguarding, and supportive supervision and monitoring. So for especially for youth-led organizations or young people who work in this field, this toolkit is already laid down some procedures and describing these key things that will help you through the process of staff recruitment, support, and responsibility. And for instance, for child safeguarding and other related protection issues, especially in humanitarian settings, is very, very important. So it's very good. The toolkit highlights these things. Now, for resource mobilization, it outlines different steps of resource mobilization, including identifying and networking with donors, exploring funding opportunities, engaging SRH and ASRH stakeholders, and contributing to proposal writing and budget development. This section provides two templates for proposal and budget, including a sample budget and corresponding budget notes. This is amazing because as youth-led organizations or young people, some of us struggle through this part a bit because perhaps we may be used to working with managers and supervisors who are already experts in this field. So when usually you are the one managing your own project and have to deal with resource mobilization, it sometimes becomes a struggle. Now, this part of the toolkit explain and it has outlined all the things that you will need, as well as even we develop templates and samples. So like it's already like a lay down guidance for you to slowly learn and to guide you to overcome some of these challenges that some of us young people and youth organizations may encounter in our journeys. Now, for program implementation, it emphasizes the importance of leadership and the type of management and supervision you provide to staff. This section describes what an action plan is, how to use it, and provides an action plan template you can use and adapt for your programming. Amazing. So in terms of developing your program, your activities and everything, this chapter um, looks at the broader view of program implementation. And in developing an action plan, it guides you through the specific things and milestones that you are aiming to achieve, how to achieve them, and it guides you throughout your implementation phase. And it's for a lot of young people in youth-led organization. It's a good head start to overcoming some of the challenges that you may encounter in the way. Now, that's a bit of a few questions for us to think over, and I'll be very happy if I could hear some thoughts on from you or on how this will be useful as I keep expanding on them. Now, how do you think your organization, from all the explanations that we've given so far, how do you think your explanation will use um, this guidance and tools from the chapter that I have explained? How do you think it's important to you? You know your organization better and you know the challenges that you're confronted with. Now, how does this part of the toolkit, how will you use it? How is it important to your organization? I'll be glad to hear a few thoughts from our colleagues who are online. Hello. I see Claudia, I see Daniel, I see David, I see Debbie. All of you, I would love to hear from one or two people at least. Okay, so as I wait for someone to share how these will be useful, I'll go ahead to share some examples. For instance, this part can also help you use the proposal templates to advocate for more ASRH funding. For instance, I have worked with colleagues. There was an aspect of my life where I had no idea how to even put together a proposal and all of that. But having this template, I know it would have been much, much easier for me to use the template to guide how I am planning and how I am going to raise funds to support more adolescent sexual and reproductive health funding and programming. So that is one way. Another way is also the use of the onboarding and job description template to hire staff that are dedicated to ASRH activities. For instance, you have your project or activity and you need to hire more support staff. The template is it's easy for you to just, based on your project, input the kind of support or requirements, responsibilities, the dedication or qualification of the support staff. So right as you're recruiting, whoever decides to apply or join the organization in, how do I say it, in leading this implementation of this program knows what the organization needs, knows why they are, how do I say it, knows how, like why they are applying and the kind of support that is required of them. They can also just through this template, they can also envision where the organization or the project is going to, so that they can be in a better position to contribute to it when they are finally hired. Now, throughout this year, youth-led organizations and young people expressed the need for more operational guidance and support that was tailored to their needs. Much of the guidance for SRH is geared towards larger organizations. How can we use this chapter from the toolkit to help community-based youth-led organizations implementing ASRH services? In, in the youth webinar series, we talked about co-developing a companion guide to the toolkit for youth-led and community-based organizations, where the guidance is modified to the realities of local organizations with different staffing and resources levels compared to other big organizations like the UN agencies and international NGOs. So I still would be happy if I could hear from one or two people on how chapter 8, and if they still have some feedback on chapter 6, on how it will help their organizations in hiring staff, in overseeing their responsibilities in managing their projects, or just lay down guidance to support them in their activities in their organizations. Anyone?
Can I go ahead?
Yes, please, your name.
Okay.
Afternoon.
Hello, Rosemary. You can talk.
Hello, good
Hi,
afternoon.
everyone. Can I go ahead?
Hi, Rosemary, we can hear you. Yes, please talk.
Okay, so for me, from Care Nigeria, what I would really take is in terms of the multisectoral linkages and referral pathways, where we've been having some challenges concerning referral pathways, in the sense that it's not in a project, it's not all components of services that is being done. So I think that the multisectoral linkages and referral pathway will go, the guideline will go a long way in helping us to tackle some of the issues that we are facing. And then when it comes to community-based services, outreach platform, it's a good thing for us to go back to the drawing boards, check the guidelines and see what things are we doing well and what things do we need to add, or what things are we not getting it right, and then use the new guidance notes to help the organization. Over.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I'm taking the bit about having to go back to the drawing board and have a few reflections on what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, and to see which part of the toolkit can help you overcome the challenges that there is. That's amazing, and thank you very much for sharing. So that was Rosemary from Care Nigeria. Is there any other person who would want to share a few experiences and ideas on how the toolkit can help different parts of their project or programming within their offices or space or projects? The time to speak is now. Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Hello, I can hear you, Chilanga. Did I get your name right?
Thank you. Yes, this is Chilanga. I work with the WHO Africa Region Office. I support countries in West Africa and SRHR. So thank you very much for the invitation. It's a great meeting. And I'd just like to contribute here that I think in managing and giving this chapter gives a very good guidance to support, I think, as the previous colleague said, not to miss out on the key roles. So I think when you look at the roles, when you look at in partnership with other organizations in response to humanitarian crisis, it helps us to know maybe what can a specific agency maybe contribute in terms of maybe the staffing, the requirements, but also a guidance on this one. Also, once activities and what we want to do have been well identified, I think even resource mobilization, finding out what an organization can contribute, particularly when we work during joint programs, I think this to me would be quite the added value of having notes and tools like this. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much, Chilanga. And that was a nice contribution, and thank you for speaking. Now, I'll be glad if I can pick one more person, or if you can also send your comments and feedback via the chat box. I'll read them and we'll also take note of the input. But if there is anyone of us who would want to speak and share or ask questions, please feel free. How would the toolkit, chapter 6 and 8, especially for chapter 8, how would you be able to use it to overcome some of the challenges in your organization, projects, and all of that? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Oko. If I could come in at this point, I'm not able to raise my hand. So my name is Regina. That's fine. My name is Regina. I'm the Regional Advocacy Coordinator for CARE West Africa. And I thought to make a few comments on chapter 8 particularly. For me, I see this as really being helpful, and that's a strong guidance tool for many of the youth-led organizations that we work with in emergency situations. And definitely, I see different components as really integral to the work that they do, and it would help strengthening their capacities to effectively do work in this area. So for instance, some of the key things that come out strongly for me, and which you had already highlighted, are along the areas of the advocacy toolkits that chapter 8 makes available. And I believe these are very, very critical when it comes to working in this humanitarian context. Another thing that I think is also worth highlighting here is the information around being able to effectively gather documents and disseminate evidence in doing your work. And I believe this really comes out strongly in terms of how you are effectively able to ensure such information is reaching other actors within the space, and how you are galvanizing and collecting information that really helps in addressing the issue at hand. So these are just a few comments coming up strongly for me. I also like the idea of being able to have an action plan that a team can easily work with and effectively use in implementing this initiative. So this is definitely a toolkit that we would recommend to the youth-led organizations we work with.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Regina. And We look forward to following up with how you work with other youth organizations and all. We barely have 1 minute to wrap up this session. So, Anita,
Yes.
yes. So, if you
Okay.
have anything to say
Thank you.
before we wrap up.
Yes. Thank you so much, everyone, for your contributions. We are grateful that you were able to join our session today. And if there are any questions or any other contributions you would like to make, you can drop them in the comments box or reach out to the organizers of this event. And I'm pretty certain that they would have whatever answers or guidance that you would need. Thank you once again.